Yes, we had put the future of wastewater treatment question mark because the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive is not yet in force. It's a major new legislative driver on the way, and if adopted, will direct the wastewater sector for the next decades. And so the current Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has been with us now for 30 years. And during that time, it has had a very significant positive effect on water quality across Europe, contributing to achieving objectives of the Water Framework Directive and other legislation, other environmental legislation. And we heard yesterday in Trina Christensen's excellent presentation about these significant positive effects that have been seen from the implementation of the current directive. She showed some graphs for biochemical oxygen demand and ammonia, which showed the average concentrations having a step change in the right direction. As a national water utility, Uisce Éireann has been active at a European level, participating in the development of this major new piece of legislation. The recast of the directive will drive even further improvement, and it raises ambition to more specifically target remaining sources of pollution loads. So these include stormwater overflows and polluted discharges of urban runoff, poorly performing individual systems, and smaller settlements that are not already covered by the directive. Settlements are named, they're agglomerations. They're known as agglomerations in the directive. But this directive is about much more than wastewater treatment. And so the original directive was concerned with protecting the environment from the adverse effects of discharges of wastewater. This recast widens the scope substantially. There's something in it for everyone. It's more aligned with the EU's Green Deal and the One Health approach. So the Green Deal we also heard a lot about yesterday, and then the One Health approach is another policy driver from Europe, and it's about balancing the health of people, animals, and environment. So this is coming through to make this recast directive more holistic and promote the ethos of leave no one behind. In addition to protection of the environment, its objectives include health. So this is covered in requirements of the directive, such as regular surveillance monitoring of public health parameters in urban wastewater, and access to sanitation for all, especially vulnerable groups, as well as, of course, the new requirement to target removal of micropollutants from wastewater discharge. And these are things that arise from people, from us using medicines and other products that we take or wash off our bodies and enter the wastewater stream. Another big area of the recast directive is on resource reuse. So we've heard about circularity and circular economy. The recast directive is really promoting that to look at recovering resources such as nutrients, and also the water reuse for agricultural irrigation, which Donal referred to earlier. All of this is promoted and facilitated by the new requirements in the directive. A huge area is energy. So the directive includes targets to become energy neutral. So energy neutrality for the wastewater sector. That means meeting all the energy requirements for our wastewater treatment plants by phased targets. It also includes a requirement to monitor greenhouse gases. And implementation of the polluter pays principle is also coming through in the new directive, with a new producer responsibility scheme for cosmetics and pharmaceutical sectors initially. And the idea of this is to cover the cost of the fourth stage treatment, so to cover the cost of quaternary treatment. And then transparency is also a big area, with inclusion of things like more information to public. And we saw that reflected in the recast of the Drinking Water Directive, which was mentioned earlier too. The recast directive is also concerned with integrated drainage management plan. So it's concerned with integrating the management of urban wastewater and surface water to reduce pollution loads from our drainage networks and to use more nature-based solutions in our drainage planning. There has been much collaboration already in this process, which started several years ago. Uisce Éireann has been engaged in this process for quite a number of years. As a national utility, we're members of these European organisations, Euro and Aqua Publica Europea. Euro is the European Federation of National Associations of Water Services. It's representing national drinking and wastewater service providers from 33 countries, from both private and public sectors. Aqua Publica Europea is the European Association of Public Water Operators. And we're fortunate to have Uisce Éireann represented at senior levels in both these organisations currently, and we hope have been somewhat influential in development of the recast directive. We work very closely with our colleagues in Water Advisory Unit, and we'd like to very much thank them for their hard work and commitment in seeing this process through, and hopefully coming out with a final text that is somewhat achievable and meets that balance of challenging and ambitious, but achievable. So where we are at the moment is that a proposal for the recast directive was published towards the end of 2022. And there then followed significant negotiations at a European level between Commission, Council and Parliament, which our department was very active in. There was then a provisional text agreed and published, and we are here mid-2024 with expected adoption of the recast towards the end of this year. Once it is in force, and again, it's not in force yet, there's expected to be 30 months of a transposition period. So although it's not in force yet, we do have a fair idea of the key elements that will be in it, and because of the challenges included and the timeframes involved and the need to collaborate with so many different bodies, we need to start preparing now. So in the directive, we're expecting larger plants to have a threshold of 150,000 population equivalent, 150,000 PE. And that's important because there's different obligations for larger plants and those below the threshold. Energy neutrality will be a requirement, we think, for all plants over 10,000 PE with phased targets to 2045 perhaps. This will mean optimizing use of biogas from anaerobic digestion, solar PV and wind to cover energy requirements from renewables. The directive does allow for some generation off-site and some purchase from third-party providers, but only when all measures on-site have been addressed. And these will be identified through energy audits, which are also a requirement in the directive. And Uisce Éireann is somewhat ahead on this, because we've had energy audits done for some years now and are already implementing those recommendations through our energy strategy. It will be challenging, it will be extremely challenging to meet 100% energy neutrality, but we have started the journey to get us there. Then quaternary treatment, which is the fourth stage of treatment or advanced treatment. So this is a completely new process for Ireland. It's in place in countries like Switzerland, so we have a lot to learn from them, but also they're operating in a very different context to the Irish context. In the European countries, they're discharging to large transboundary rivers, whereas in Ireland, our larger plants are mostly coastal. So there's a lot of regional differences there, but still some lessons to be learned from the likes of Switzerland. So this treatment is to target removal of micropollutants and will apply to all larger plants. Other plants will be assessed and on a risk assessment basis may be required to apply the quaternary treatment. So the micropollutants are hazardous to environment and health at extremely small quantities. They're not readily biodegradable and accumulate in the environment. And the objective of this fourth stage treatment is really to reduce the transmission of these substances in the environment. But really it needs to be tackled at source to be more effective. The standards for tertiary treatment have been tightened. So tightened nutrient reduction standards that's both nitrogen and phosphorus. The tightened nutrient standards apply again at all larger plants. So a blanket requirement regardless of the receiving water body that is discharging to. And other plants, again, will be assessed, and on a risk assessment basis, the tighter nutrient standards may be applied, both to the plants discharging to an area at risk of eutrophication, or an area sensitive to eutrophication, as the terminology looks like in the new directive, but also to plants discharging to catchments of areas sensitive to eutrophication. So there's a huge body of work to be done in all these risk assessments and developing methodologies in order to establish these lists of areas. So what's the change for secondary treatment? Well, the current directive has secondary treatment standards applicable to agglomerations of 2,000 PE and below. The new directive lowers that threshold to take in more smaller agglomerations, and it's reduced to 1,000 PE. The information to the public, we've already mentioned, it must be adequate, easily accessible, and online. And we will work to figure out what that will mean. And obviously, it will depend on the final text in the directive and how that is then transposed into national legislation. So a lot still left to be worked out. The monitoring ramp-up is a biggie, not only in the parameters that need to be monitored, but also in the frequency of the sampling. And of course, the greenhouse gas monitoring, which is another area we'll have to get to grips with. And on the greenhouse gas monitoring, we have already started some partnership projects to look at methodologies that will work here. And we're members of Community of Practice with UK and Ireland to look at this whole area. So the integrated urban wastewater management plans are also a key focus for us at the moment. This is a very exciting area as we look at approaches to assess pollution load from our combined and separate foul systems, but then also how best to collaborate on integrating the storm systems. And there's much to work out in this space. The requirements in the directive are to put in place these integrated urban wastewater management plans for all agglomerations above 1,000 PE. That's what it's looking like at the moment. And it includes load spill reduction objectives. The drainage of our cities and towns is a shared responsibility, with Uisce Éireann being responsible for the public wastewater network, including combined sewers, and local authorities being responsible for the public stormwater network and overall management of flood risk. And of course, there's interactions between these systems and with the environment, particularly in the larger agglomerations, and complexity involved in understanding how the system operates hydraulically and in planning to meet future needs. We see it as a very positive opportunity for collaboration and very much look forward to working with our local authority partners on this, and we're very willing and keen to offer assistance and to work together. So overall, can we harness available expertise in Ireland and approach this on a national basis? There's massive challenges, and there's lots of different agencies need to work together, and some of us will be working very closely together over the coming years under the leadership of the department. So please think about what are the biggest challenges you see in this and where potentially you or your organisation can help. So the national risk assessments we've mentioned, and we're ready to play our part. We have modelling data, we have sampling data, we have some expertise in this area, particularly on the nutrients. But on micropollutants, we really are looking for expertise to guide us on this. What constitutes a risk from micropollutants? Where are the risks? Where is investment in quaternary treatment best directed? Facilities for sampling and analysis. Where are the facilities? Are they available on a commercial scale? What are and to think about opportunities here as well. With every challenge comes opportunities. And together, we really need an Ireland approach to get to grips with this. We will be dependent on the public health agencies significantly to advise on what the relevant parameters are to be monitored. The directive mentions COVID, influenza virus, polio, etc. We'll also need to consider monitoring for antimicrobial resistance and PFAS. big areas. So just very quickly on the treatment standards, biological, the BOD, COD, total suspended solids, not expected to change from the familiar 25, 125, 35. The nutrient standards expected to tighten. And then these are the proposed parameters to measure compliance for the micropollutants. All sorts of pharmaceuticals, antidepressants, non-inflammatory, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, drugs used to treat epilepsy, schizophrenia, a whole mix of things, antibiotics. And the proposal is that we would have to demonstrate between inlet and outlet an 80% minimum removal efficiency. It will be very challenging, especially if it's coming in small quantities. We've mentioned most of these challenges and opportunities already, but I will just highlight the constrained space and land availability. We saw earlier, for example, the picture of Ringsend, which treats 40% of the country's wastewater. That's in an extremely constrained area under severe development pressure and in close proximity to sensitive areas. So land availability and space will be a major consideration. Treatment of residuals will also be a major consideration. So if these micropollutants are taken out of the water, where do they go? They'll go into the residual waste streams, and how do we deal with that? Conflicting drivers, such as a need for more intensive wastewater treatment, but also a need to reduce our energy demand. So how does that go together? Timing of EPR scheme and setting that up, whereas we need to be investing in these assessments and monitoring now. There will be a need for significant additional investments, and in the short term, this will impact on other planned investments, and then in medium to longer term, there will be more additional investment needed, and all of that has to be factored in. Data, technical skills, supply chain availability, the list goes on and on. But please try to see the opportunities in this as well as the challenges and how we can work together to factor it into a successful implementation. And following on from the theme of earlier presentations and also reflecting the department's message from yesterday, the secret to, hang on till I get this right. The secret to progress and delivery is collaborative action of stakeholders. So we look forward to working further with the department, with the EPA and other stakeholders through transposition and implementation. Thank you.